Hockey Talk Show on this Thursday, April 5th. It is 6:41 in the East. We are going to be talking about the Sedin twins saying goodbye. Will John Tavares say goodbye? And I'll tell you who's not saying goodbye. That's Mr. Bowman and Mr. Quenville. They're staying put. All that and more. The day's hockey news right here, analyzed for you and you alone. Well, you and everybody else who's watching on this episode of the Hockey Talk Show. Bring it in, baby. Bring it in nice and close. This is going to be a tough one. It's going to be an emotional show. I could tell already. I could see it now. It's going to be an emotional one. Whether you're watching on Facebook Live or YouTube Live, we certainly do appreciate you being here on the Hockey Talk Show. Like we said, we cover the day's news in hockey in a live setting here. So if you're new to us on YouTube or Facebook, subscribe, follow, ring the little bell, and make sure you're getting our notifications so that you can join in on the hockey discussion each and every weekday here as we talk hockey for you guys. We are going to delve into the Islanders' issues. Now, I will say this. We can't possibly cover all of the Islander issues. That would take days, perhaps weeks. But we will scratch the surface. We, of course, will also tip our caps to the Sedin twins as they say goodbye to Vancouver. Lee, welcome in. Thanks for the comment. Lee says, great show, and I can trust Lee. He seems like Lee knows what's up. Lee knows what's happening. Sedin twins saying goodbye to Vancouver. Very, very sad day for the history of the Vancouver Canucks. So we'll touch on the Sedin twins for a little while. I honestly don't have too much to say about them. Not much that we didn't cover on yesterday's episode. If you missed that, go ahead and go back. Of course, you could always see what's going on here at hockeytalkshow.com. That's hockeytalkshow.com. But we're going to spend time looking at John Tavares and whether or not he's going to stay a New York Islander, whether or not he goes to the Montreal Canadiens. Does he go to the Vegas Golden Knights? Where is number 91 headed? We'll look at that. What's wrong with the New York Islanders? We'll take a look at all their issues. I know the snow must go chants are going to be plentiful, and I believe that they are justified, but I warn everybody. Firing the general manager does not guarantee you a playoff season next year. It's just not that simple. It sucks, but it just doesn't work that way. You can't just fire one person and expect this team to magically turn around in one season. It's not going to happen. So perhaps that might not be the exact way to go. I just caution everybody to keep that in mind. We're also going to talk about Stan Bowman and Joel Quenville. They are staying put. John McDonough said in a press conference, and I believe him. I believe him wholeheartedly. Lou, thanks so much for the support. As always, brother, totally appreciated. By the way, I was watching some of your... Lou does a great job on the Vegas Golden Knights coverage. I'm going to have to get some links up for all our YouTube partners. I've been lacking on that. And does some cool stuff with the video games. He's doing video game videos now. People watching video. I'll watch on occasion. I can't believe this is a thing, but it's a thing. We may have to bring in some video games on the Hockey Talk Show. I don't know. But Stan Bowman and Joel Quenville are staying put in Chicago. And it's just so funny, the juxtaposition of all of these organizations where, where the Canucks are, where the Islanders are, where the Blackhawks are, all teams that are not going to the Stanley Cup playoffs and all have interesting ways of handling things. Again, watching the Sedins go out without a Stanley Cup championship, that's not how you want to see John Tavares go out. That really isn't. And then on the other hand, when everybody calling for the heads of Garth Snow and Doug Waite, which might be necessary, that's not the way you want to see it handled in Chicago, you know? So it's kind of interesting how these franchises are all dealing with similar issues, or there's just some running similarities between all of them. And we're going to get into this, and we're going to talk about all these things. Anything that you want to discuss, you just let me know. Drop a comment in the Facebook or YouTube chat. And, of course, you could always tweet us at Hockey Talk Show. That's at Hockey Talk Show. We're going to spend a majority of this episode delving into the Islanders' issues. So let's talk about boy, where do we want to start? Let's talk about the Nashville Predators quickly here off the start of the show. Nashville Predators have a chance to clinch the President's Trophy. And I know Vegas Golden Knights fans are going to be upset by this because I know that they were eyeing this for quite some time now. But rightfully so. I think a solid President's Trophy winning team are these Nashville Predators. They really have just built something from start to finish, net to center. Just phenomenally done. David Poile just deserves all the praise in the world for building a hell of a team. They got really close last year. I think they're going to get really close again this year to a Stanley Cup championship. And praise has got to be given to the Nashville Predators, who have a chance to clinch the President's title tonight as they take on the Caps. I believe they're in Washington. They are in Washington for a 7 o'clock puck drop. On the Sedin twins, we really talked quite a bit about them yesterday. There's not really much I'm going to add to them today, but deserving of all the praise and respect. They've just done a phenomenal job. I know that there's a lot of people that are upset on the ticket prices for the game tonight in Vancouver, but what do you expect? I mean, it's their final game. Ticket prices are going to be through the roof. You know, people who have, season tickets are selling these tickets to pay for their whole entire season, and they're getting those prices. I mean, I would rather be there for myself, but I totally understand it. These guys are going to be missed, 22 and 33. There's really not much else I can add to what we haven't already said. I did come across on Twitter, the NHL posted the Sedin's commercial from a couple of years ago. If you guys remember the Swedish Twins commercial, let me bring this up for you guys. Let's watch this together. And for those of you who aren't watching, you guys will be able to hear some of the audio. But if you remember, the setup was that the Sedin twins, I can't get this centered. Oh, this stinks. Oh, here we go. All right. The premise was, for those of you who are listening on the podcast and not watching, that there is a bachelor party. You don't really know it's a commercial for the National Hockey League, but there's a bachelor party. And these guys are all playing poker. You know, they got pizza and poker and all the things. And this is what happens. Oh, were we not getting sound through this? My apologies.
Hey, what's up?
So a great commercial for the National Hockey League. If you guys remember that one, I remember seeing that one pretty much everywhere for a while there. They think they're getting some Swedish twins, and it turns out to be the Sedin twins. And then the one guy who's into hockey plays the music for them anyway so that they can dance. It's just part of the great things. One of the many great things that the Sedins have done over their time. So I just wanted to share that with you guys quickly. So you can see that, and if you missed it, but that was from pretty much back in the day. Notice too the old Vancouver Canucks jerseys before they went to the green and blue, which I loved both. I love the old gray, red, and blue, and the green and blue that they have now. The Canucks have always been interesting on their jersey front, so I'm happy to see that they continue with the nice jerseys to this day. Speaking of continuing, let's touch quickly on Stan Bowman and Joel Quenneville. So it was John McDonough who called the press conference, which is always odd. This is always my favorite press conference, the so-and-so is not fired press conference. Like usually press conferences, you call it to announce something. They were essentially announcing these guys get to keep their jobs, which is always just an odd thing that really doesn't happen anywhere else in sports. I mean, there's never really a time where your boss calls you into the office and goes, "Congratulations, you get to keep your job." And you're like, "What do you mean? I thought I was doing just fine." And he's like, "No. You are. Things are okay. You're doing okay. Remember you made the mistake last week? You know, you made up for it, but still, I wanted to get," or, they call an office meeting. I'm calling this office meeting to let everybody know that Will is going to stay employed with us. Like, that would just be bizarre. That would just be really, really bizarre. So this is still sort of a strange scenario, but obviously with all the questions going on in Chicago, it was worthy of such a press conference. So John McDonough called the press conference and said that Bowman and Quenneville are the right people to put the Blackhawks back on track after their worst season in a decade. McDonough said, and I quote here, "I met with Stan about a week ago, talked about his future and talked about Joel's future. I believe in continuity. They've had an incredible body of success. We're not tethered to the past. This has been a very disappointing year, and our expectations are incredibly high. We're not going to deviate from those expectations, but I believe both Stan and Joel are the guys that are going to bring us back." Quenneville said, "We're excited today. It's been a tough year, but we all expect and look forward to getting back to where we want to be. That's to be a contending team, learning from this experience, and from the beginning to end, finding ways to recapture what made us so successful in the past, and finding the appetite of winning again. Some good conversations with John and Stan, and we're looking forward to getting back where we expected to be." I think it's the right move. I know that might not be easy for Blackhawk fans to go along with, but Joel Quenneville is an outstanding coach. Bowman, although in the beginning didn't get a lot of credit for putting this team together, there's no doubt that the second and definitely the third Stanley Cup for the Blackhawks was entirely his, and he deserves the chance to give this team, a once-over and get them back on track. Again, firing the manager and the coach does not necessarily fix everything in a day or a year or whatever the case may be. It takes time and continuity. By the way, and let's point this out. Let's all recognize the fact that Winnipeg was in this exact scenario last year and decided to keep Paul Maurice, much to the chagrin of a lot of people. And look how well that worked out for the Winnipeg Jets. Look at where the Winnipeg Jets are now because of continuity, because they kept their coach, because they kept their manager, because they didn't do any major overhauls. They kept the team together. Sometimes, not all the time, sometimes continuity and status quo and not making the change and staying with it is the right move to do. And in this particular case with the Blackhawks, I believe this to be true. I do, however, think they do need to move away from the past somewhat. Obviously, moving Panarin wasn't a great idea and wasn't the right move. I would have kept Panarin over Saad if I were the Blackhawks. Again, I know there's other issues and things that we don't know about. I know they got a lot of big contracts tied up, but Saad, Anisimov, I would look to move away from at least one of those deals. And I think they can move away from at least one of those deals. It's going to be harder to move away from Brent Seabrook or, a Jonathan Toews. A lot of teams are going to want Jonathan Toews, but it's going to be hard to fit his 10.5 under a lot of teams' caps. So We'll see what they do. I thought Duclair was a good gamble. I think they need a lot of help in their mid-six up front. I think they need a little bit of an overhaul on defense. And then they just need a healthy goaltender. Like, let's not forget that a lot of this year's disappointment for Chicago is due to Corey Crawford, you know, and has very little to do with the ineptitude of Bowman or Quenneville. They're good coaches. He's a good manager, not the best, but certainly a good one. And he's had some success. He deserves to stay. On the other hand, looking at John Tavares and the issues of the New York Islanders, this is a different story altogether for the Isles. This is a completely different story. They need to address a lot. I feel like this franchise has a lot of issues, just even more so than their coach and their manager. Eddie on YouTube, Paul Maurice was thrown under the bus in Toronto. Can't fire the team, so the coach takes a hit. You know, it's true, but again, I have to leave it as an example here. Winnipeg stayed pat. Last year wasn't the year for them. They had their disappointments. Winnipeg stayed with it, and it paid off for them. It paid off for them in a big way. Now, tonight may be John Tavares' last Islander Ranger game in an Islander uniform. Maybe his last game at the Barclays Center. It would be very sad. I must reiterate what I said yesterday, that I feel like all Islander fans that are going to the game tonight should cheer this guy every time he touches the puck. That would be my dream come true. In fact, we took yesterday's show and we spliced off a piece of the show where I said exactly this, that Islander fans should cheer John Tavares every time he touches the puck and not stop cheering until he gets off the ice. And we put it out, and I think we're up over 2,500 views on that one. It got spread around quite a bit. Isles blogs and all the like, and thanks to all those guys for spreading the word on that. Probably won't happen tonight at the Barclays Center, and we probably, if we really spent some time on it, could have pushed it out a little bit more. But I think that is just what the Islander fans should do. I don't think it convinces him to stay. I don't think it hurts the cause for him to stay. So I think, and by the way, even if he's leaving, it's going to be a nice thank you. I think that is what Islander fans should absolutely do. Just stand up and applaud. Stand up and cheer as much as you can for this guy every time he touches the puck. Gregory on Facebook, Tavares to Montreal would help Quenneville. Quenneville, honestly, it was Quenneville's decision if he wanted to stay or not. And I think he wanted to stay. I don't think there was any question or not. I think Quenneville could have been the one to leave. I don't think the Chicago Blackhawks fired Joel Quenneville. Just like the New York Rangers shouldn't fire Alain Vigneault. Sometimes you get these coaches, and they may not have good years, but you can't fire a good coach over a bad year. You just can't. And some of these guys are just great coaches. And Joel Quenneville is one of them. But back to the Islanders and their issues. I feel like at some point here, there is going to be a meeting between ownership and John Tavares. And I think that is where the fate of Garth Snow is going to lie. I think this has to take place. I think ownership has to sit down with John Tavares, because I think that's what it's going to come down to. And if you look at what Pierre LeBrun has been saying and Bob McKenzie's been saying, they've all been alluding to the same thing that I've been saying and what I'm going to say again here right now, which is that if Garth Snow is going to go, the man on the screen right now, number 91, is going to be the one to do it. It's his decision. If he says, look, I'm displeased with this team, I don't know if we're going in the right direction, but I want to stay, then Garth Snow goes. But if he says, look, I think it was a bad year and we're headed in the right direction and I like it and I'm going to stay, then Garth gets to stay. I want to just remind Islander fans, firing the general manager doesn't mean this team turns around tomorrow, because you bring in a new manager and maybe he wants to bring in a new coach. And maybe he doesn't like Nick Leddy on defense. And maybe he's tired of this. Maybe and he's going to want to bring in his own guys. And he's going to want to surround his own players with John Tavares. I mean, he's going to want to surround John Tavares with his own players. Maybe he doesn't like Bailey on Tavares' wing. You know, maybe he's going to want to come in and make changes, whoever that person is. So, although I believe that Garth has not been good, I can't honestly say he needs to be fired today, and I can't honestly say he gets fired after Saturday. It's possible. It certainly is possible, because perhaps the conversation between John and ownership has already happened. But I do think that, you know, for Islander fans expecting Garth Snow to be fired on Sunday, you might be disappointed. Again, I felt like they kept Garth for a whole year just to execute this negotiation. I think ownership felt that if there was a guy that can sign Tavares, it would be the guy that drafted him. And I can't argue with that logic. What I can argue with was all his other shortcomings, which was not making a deal at the deadline. We saw how much that hurt Dallas. It hurt the Islanders just as much. I mean, it was not the right move for the Islanders to not make a move at the deadline. We all know that Joshua Ho-Sang not playing the entire year with the big club was a gigantic mistake. And there was a little bit of an uproar a couple of weeks ago when Arthur Staple did a piece with Joshua Ho-Sang and what he said. And he didn't say anything terrible. He just said, look, I believe in Doug and I believe in Garth, but I want to be up playing. I trust them that they want the best for me, but I want to be up playing. And he alluded to the fact that, you know, he was down in the A to learn how to play defense, and that he wasn't playing the team defense game. But I look at this franchise, and I agree with Joshua Ho-Sang. There was a lot of forwards for the New York Islanders this year not playing the team defense game. There was a ton of them. And then I look at other comments from Twitter on the New York Islanders. And I see a lot of this one. This is another falsehood spread around by Islander fans. One person says it kind of makes sense. Everybody's got to say it. Brock Nelson needs to go. No, Brock Nelson doesn't need to go. Brock Nelson needs a scoring winger on his line. Brock Nelson this year played with Tanner Fritz. Exactly. Brock Nelson played with Andrew Ladd, who had the absolute worst season of his entire career. I said this a ton in the beginning. 66 with the big club gives you 3 offensive lines. When he goes down, that third line becomes a checking line. And that's why Brock Nelson's numbers suffered this year. You watch Brock when he played with Anthony Beauvillier and some of the other offensive-minded guys, his game was so much better. So don't sit here and tell me that Brock Nelson needs to be traded. No, Brock Nelson needs scoring forwards around him. He's not good enough to be in the Isles' top 2 lines, but he's great as a third-line scoring centerman. Depth down the middle is coveted by every NHL franchise. Look at what Pittsburgh did. Pittsburgh bent over backwards, circumvented the cap, got Vegas to pick up chunks of Derek Brassard's salary so that they would have a decent third-line center. And Islander fans are sitting there going, let's trade Brock Nelson. He sucks this year. Are you kidding me? Brock Nelson's not the problem. Tanner Fritz on Brock Nelson's line is the problem. Tanner Fritz over Joshua Ho-Sang is the problem. If you want to fire Garth Snow for that very reason. If you want to fire Doug Weight for that very reason. They got it wrong. It's a double standard. Let's call it what it is. It's a double standard. Joshua Ho-Sang was punished for things that Andrew Ladd did, that Tanner Fritz did, that Anthony Beauvillier certainly did. Anthony Beauvillier's defensive game was awful. Awful this year. Terrible. I didn't see Jordan Eberle back-checking a whole ton. A couple of times, but not a whole ton. Do I think Brock Nelson's attitude kind of sucks? Yeah, I do. But I'd be pissed all year, too, if I'm playing next to Tanner Fritz. If you look over and your line mate's wearing number 56, that's a problem. That's a big problem. I think that it's horrible that they wasted this young kid's career. And again, look, I'm a parent. I get it. You got to do the bad things for the good of the player. Being a GM is like being a mom or a dad. You got to do what's right for the player, even though they may hate it at first. So I totally get trying to keep a player under control and bringing them up and developing them the right way. It's just like how you want to raise a kid. May not be easy to do it, but it's going to be worth it for you in the long haul. So I get it, but it's a double standard. The kid should have gotten more playing time. Perhaps it would have been different for the Islanders this season. So fire Garth Snow for that reason. You want to fire Garth Snow for trading away Travis Hamonic and not being able to upgrade his defense. Clearly, his defense was an issue all season long, and he did nothing. He bet on the wrong two goaltenders. Fire Garth Snow for those reasons. The goaltending on this team is atrocious. It's downright terrible. And they're sitting there fooling around with Christopher Gibson, who I'm sorry is just not an NHL goaltender. So if you look at the Islanders, there's a lot of issues here, and there's not a quick fix. I want to urge Islander fans to keep that in mind. There is not a quick fix. You fire Garth Snow tomorrow, you're looking at another 2 years until the new GM gets his footing in place. And whatever changes they want to make, it can take the Islanders a really, really long time to get there. And that, I don't know if John Tavares wants to wait around for. So for those of you out there going, Tavares is going to Montreal, look, I'm not going to argue with it. I'm sure Montreal is going to be sitting there with a $12 million offer for John Tavares come July 1. But does Don Tavares want to go up to Montreal and sit through what's going to be the rest of their rebuild? Because I know that's why he's not going to the Rangers. And that might be the other reason why he's not going to Montreal. There's no team that needs him more. There's no team that is desperate for a centerman more than the Montreal Canadiens. And they'll have the cap space, and it'll make sense. And I'm sure the offer will be there. Does he want to go there is the question. I don't know. Is Vegas the easier option? Because if you're going to lose James Neal, but you can pick up John Tavares, that's a pretty good deal at the end of the day. He's used to playing in this size of a market. Vegas has around 2 million people, I think, 2.5, right? Long Island is around the same. Granted, you're not next to New York City, which is a bit of a difference, but still. Wold Wolf on YouTube. Carolina got John Tavares for Noah Hannafin and a first-round draft pick. That way, as talented as Hannafin is, that way it would take a lot more. JT will be wearing a Toronto Maple Leafs jersey come July 1st. I would have agreed with that last year, but I can't agree with that now. You just don't need Tavares. It's weird to say, but you just don't need Tavares gunking it up. I also saw some people going, well, maybe Tampa will get him. He's close to Stamkos. The Islanders made a play for Stamkos. It makes sense. They just don't have the cap space. And I don't think he takes a whole lot less money to go down there and win for 2 seasons. I just don't see John Tavares being that type of player. I do think he comes back to the island at the end of all of this. I do. But I do think he's going to have a number of great offers to consider. And I don't think it's a guarantee he comes back. I really don't. But I think the Islanders need to make a lot of changes. And by the way, and because I know a lot of people are catching on to this show, the Islanders, it's not just on the ice. I mean, it's off the ice too. They need to just, like, their pregame show, their intermission shows suck. They're terrible. Here's a tip. Maybe some of you guys are new hockey fans. If your intermission show, you watch your team and your intermission, show comes up in between the periods. If they're showing National Hockey League highlights, meaning packages of like the top scoring goals of the month, you do not have a solid franchise. If they're showing website, features of, casino night more than once, you do not have a real franchise. And the Islanders do not have a real franchise. Shannon Hogan does a tremendous job. I'm not taking her down a peg, but they just need to invest in the product and how they deliver it to people, because it's very lackluster. You watch the Toronto Maple Leafs, you watch the Montreal Canadiens. These guys have hosts, analysts. They're breaking down stats. They're breaking down plays. You don't get any of that with the New York Islanders. I'd be curious for Nashville Predators fans, Vegas fans, if you guys are getting that already. Because the Islanders' intermission report and their broadcast team is pitiful. Not from a talent standpoint. They're good on that. But their analytical side is awful. And it hurts the franchise. So again, consider this, Islander fans. You want to fire the general manager? You're essentially asking John to wait another 2 to 3 years to be competitive. Not to say that they won't be, because they could be competitive next season. They could roll in with the same roster and just be a little bit better. It's possible. They'd have to change their goaltending, but it's possible. But you're 3 years away from your arena. You're another 2 years away from a new GM, coach, whatever. It's just not that easy. The outlook is not great for the New York Islanders right now with John Tavares. Montreal needs Tavares, and it will happen. We got the moolah. You got the moolah. You got the moolah. Montreal's got the moolah. The things that Montreal doesn't have is the rest of a team and an atrocious media landscape. An atrocious media landscape. Uncle Buck, haven't been able to chat, but that's the first time I've heard Eberle and Backcheck in the same sentence. Exactly. The Islanders punished a young kid for doing something that the entire rest of the team continued to do. It is a double standard at its finest. They just mismanaged this whole thing. And let's not forget, because he's beloved, it gets overlooked, but Doug Waite's a first-year coach, and he made a lot of first-year coach mistakes. A lot of them. And Garth is a bad manager as far as communication goes because he does none of it. And he controls everything himself. And it's just not an ideal situation. The Islanders have a lot of issues. And truth be told, I don't know how they're going to turn this around and get Tavares back. But I think out of the loyalty, he does stay. The thing is, you know, I use the example of David Boyle and the Nashville Predators. The Predators just drafted defenseman after defenseman after defenseman, and for a while there, they had 9 NHL defensemen, right? And then what happened? One day, David Boyle woke up and realized, holy cow, I've got to start trading these assets for what we need, which is scoring. They could never score. They had great goaltending and defense. And then what happened? He started throwing around some picks. He tried to get some players in here. Peter Forsberg. Okay, it didn't work, but he tried. You know, now he's got number 92 in there. Now he's got a little bit, he's got all these, offensive pieces. He moved some of his defense. He moved a great defensive prospect, big, tall, strong kid, sent him to Columbus to bring in 92. It was the right move to do. At some point, he realized, I have to stop building for the future and I have to play for now. The Islanders needed to do that this year, and they didn't. So if you're going to fire Garth Snow, fire him for that reason. But again, you have to think about John Tavares negotiating with a new general manager for a contract. It doesn't bode well. Islander fans, your fate rests in a meeting between John Tavares and John Ledecky. That is it. That is how this will get done. The Islanders have the money, too. I hate to tell Montreal, Vancouver, Florida. I hate to tell you guys, the Islanders have the money. They can throw $13 million at them. It ain't about the money. It's about the situation. And where's the best situation for John? Because Vegas, to me, looks like a better situation than Montreal, than New York, than Vancouver. Okay? The teams that are going into the playoffs and have the cap space, that's the team. That's the situation. That's who you have to look out for. Those are the ones. Those are the teams. The Devils. something to look for. Could you imagine Hall and Tavares as a 1-2 punch? It's a hell of a 1-2 punch. It's a hell of a 1-2 punch. Winnipeg will have money. Columbus will have money. San Jose will have money and playoff experience and goaltending and a great defense and nicer weather. San Jose is an absolute outstanding possibility for John Tavares. So I hate to break it to you, Canadiens fans and Leafs fans, and, but there's, get on the list, because the Islanders and the Canadiens are like 5th and 6th on the list when you look at prime real estate landing for John Tavares. Do you think the draft lottery has anything to do with his decision? What do you mean? The fact that they have a couple of lottery picks coming up? Maybe. I don't think so. I think John wants to win now. And when you look at this goaltending, that ain't going to help him win. The problem is their offense is so exciting. They're all having career years. Bailey, Lee, Tavares is 3 points away from having the most points he's ever had. And it's going to be hard to walk away from Matthew Barzal. I mean, damn hard. Damn hard. If Tavares stays, it's not a sign off on Garth Snow's direction. It'll be because of 13. But John's got to be the one to do it. I hate to say this. I mean, it was the same thing, right? All those bad Leaf years, and everybody said Matt Sundin should do this and Matt Sundin should do that, and he never wanted to get involved in it. Then you look at Jack Eichel. Jack Eichel's the assistant general manager of the Buffalo Sabres. He wants to be all over it. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. LeBron James is the general manager of the Cleveland Cavaliers. LeBron James is the player, coach, GM. LeBron James says what goes in Cleveland. I don't know if it's great for them. They won a championship. Maybe they're not going to this year. I don't know. But sometimes it's good to have the players involved. But the best case scenario for fans is if John goes, look, I will stay. Don't touch the forwards. Get a better defense and get us goaltending. And I'll stay. That's what John has to say. And what John should really say is, this is a business, and Garth is not the right guy to do it. Get somebody else. I'll sign. Get somebody else who could bring in the right goaltending and the defense that we need, and we'll be great. And by the way, this team, much like Dallas, right? Much like, as Colorado has appeared to be, they're not that many pieces away from being great. They're really not. There's not really much separating the Colorados and the Islanders and the Stars and the Avalanche and the Devils of this world. There really isn't. In fact, you look at the ones that are successful, that are got the better goaltending. That's kind of what it boils down to at the end of the day. And Greiss and Halak are not the answer. And Halak goes, it's who can you bring in to fill in the rest of the void. We covered a lot. Well, I still have more to say, but I've run out of time. So we'll pick it up tomorrow on the show. But it'll be a memorable night for the Islanders tonight. Also for the Vancouver Canucks fans. Isles fans, Nucks fans, enjoy it. Enjoy as much as you can. Because for one, it's definitely the end. And for the other team, it might be the end as well. I'll see you guys on the next shift. Have a great night of hockey. Thanks, everybody, for the comments all around. Remember to share this video on Facebook and YouTube and Instagram and Twitter and everything else. Eddie, thanks as always. Won't do predictions tonight. Let's just